There are a couple of ways to get people who are low income to think about the importance of green. One is for them to understand that climate change and the impact of global warming impacts those who are poor first and worst. For example, Katrina in New Orleans. That's an example of what we will see happening repeatedly as global warming continues. People who are poor often live in coastal communities. They live in fishing communities. They live in places that are more dangerous because that is the property that they could have access to. So the impact of flooding will hit low-income people first and worst. And therefore, people need to understand for their own safety and well-being, they need to be concerned about green. The other way to get people involved in green is for them to understand the jobs of the future are green jobs. And as we try to figure out how to position ourselves for future careers that will pay living wages and allow us to support our families, we need to get with the future, and the future is about green. And so there's organizing going on all across the nation. We're part of something called Transportation for America, T4A, Transportation for America. Again, on our website, you can find out everything you need to know about it. We're on the executive committee of it. But one of the first things that we did when we joined the executive committee is we got the head of the American Public Health Association to join it, because we actually felt we needed to join health and housing, health and transportation, housing and transportation, economic development and job force and transportation. So it's a very diverse task force. They are going to be reaching out all across the country so that by the time we get to 2010, the combination of having health people involved, having all the environmental people involved who are concerned about global warming, that we have expanded it. Because it used to be a lot of our transportation was all engineers. I mean, and contractors, concrete people. That's all the people who care about it. Now we have a whole new group of people in there. That'll make a difference. The next thing that I think we can do that's more close in is that this notion of investing in things that are shovel ready. A lot of the infrastructure investments will not be completed in a short time frame. They take a long time. The money, no matter how much we desire to spend it quickly, will not be spent as quickly as desired. Therefore, while we're investing in things that are shovel ready, that are likely to be roads, and highways, and bridges, we can invest in planning, in things that are going to be more long-term, so that we can begin by 2010, we begin now by 2010, to have a whole new set of things that are shovel-ready. Everybody says that stimulus one is one because there will be a two. And when the next one comes along, we need to be better prepared to get the right things in place. One other thing that we've been talking to people at the Obama administration about, particularly people involved in innovations, is that part of the innovation we need is to deepen democracy. We need to go beyond getting people to vote and get people involved in really being able to impact the decisions in their community and getting people on metropolitan planning organization boards and having them know exactly what to do when they get there needs to be part of what we're encouraging with capacity building dollars that will flow out of that innovation fund, and that can make a difference. So there's no quick fix. But if we start now, commit to something then, and do all the things along the way, we will get there.
Thank you so much for being here, everyone here. I know a lot of us are excited to come up here and speak and your work. I think a lot of folks here do similar work. And my concern is, I'm chairman of the board of a nonprofit, Casa Familiar in San Diego. We're doing a lot of community development. We just launched our community center. We're investing. And the concepts you're talking about are very relevant. But my concern is when, community such as this, when you marginalize folks long enough, you have marginalized results. And today, with all this development, all this infrastructure, we have a new high school right around the corner of Lincoln. The big issue is race relations. We can do all the buildings and all the planning, but right now we're seeing more hate than we've ever seen in these communities that will be the majority, as you mentioned, in 2042. How do we integrate those on the personal side, these race relations? Because now you have intolerance between communities of color that we've never seen. How do we integrate that into this whole plan, from your perspective?
Thank you for that question, because it's often easy to forget about talking about that and gloss over it, and then we wonder why we hit this brick wall. And we keep hitting the brick wall of our own intolerance. I had the honor of doing a book with Manuel Pastor and Stuart Quo called Searching for the Uncommon Common Ground. And Stuart and Manuel now are redoing it so that it's going to be reissued. And when we did the book, we really were talking about coming into the 21st century, what are some of the new ways that we need to talk about race? And we talked about education and sprawl, the criminal justice system, and immigrant rights. We actually chose immigrant rather than immigration because we thought that so much happens on immigration, but not enough about how we invest in people once they're here to be able to maintain and build community. And in redoing the book, we actually are approaching some of those same issues, but we're changing them a little bit. So we're not just talking about education, we're talking about comprehensive education, because we know so much, it's not just K-12, it's 0 through college, and we need to understand what happens in community. That we're not just, the other thing that we talked about was the digital divide, but this time we're talking about 21st century employment, to really talk about what the skills are that one needs. But in the course of thinking about the book, we actually are becoming very conscious of the tensions between Black and Brown and other communities, and how to be able to talk about that with the same kind of sophistication that we were able to talk about race relations in a more classic sense, in terms of white and Black and white and Latino. A lot of searching for the uncommon ground is really there, and now we need to have a different discussion. In October, PolicyLink joined with the William C. Velasquez Center, and we had a National Black-Brown Summit in October, and we're going to have another one in Washington in June. And at the summit that we had in October, we were straightforward about this. We said, if we want to build a coalition between people who are Black and Latino, we need to not just talk about the policies that bind us, because you can tick those off very easily, but something else keeps us apart. And so for one of our days, 4 hours were spent in small groups where people broke out into fishbowl conversations. First we had people who were Latino sit in the middle of the fishbowl talking about the problems they see it. Then we had people who were Black sit in the middle of the fishbowl and talk about it, and then we all talked together. And it was a very tough, painful, tearful at times discussion. But there were some real breakthroughs for people understanding not only did they harbor a lot of petty, prejudiced ideas about the other, but there were a lot of internal problems that had been unaddressed that actually seeped out into the relationships with other groups. And so we're continuing to do that work as we go forward. So my answer to your question is, we have to continue to work on racism as traditionally has presented itself, because it's continuing to hold people down. We're still harboring a lot of traditional racism in our hearts, but it's not our hearts so much as the problem anymore. It's the institutions. It's the institutionalization of racism rather than the personal racism that and so we have to continue to focus on that. But if we're going to build the kind of society we want, we have to build a lot more solidarity among people who are all suffering from a lot of the same things, who need to overcome their own prejudices, their own ignorance, their own pettiness about others, and talk about it honestly, work on things together. Don't expect perfection from yourself. You don't have to achieve perfection to start working as if you've made progress. And so I think that we're doing this, but lots of people are doing things around the country. And here's one other thing. There's a different tone in America. There's a different tone in America. The election, no matter who you vote for, there's a different tone in America. They're willing to find their better selves. And as we all search for our better selves, I think we create an atmosphere in which we can all do better.